and also Fauzia. Sorry. Welcome all of you. نحن طبعا هنتكلم بالانجليزي والعربي. يعني ف الناس، لكن انا معانا طبعا ضيوف المفروض ما نتكلم بالعربي. ف our meeting focus closely on Darfur, Sudan war. As you know, all after 15 April, the armed forces, SAF and RAP and RSF, and both of all of you, you know what is happening in Khartoum. The both parties use all of the military tactics including the bombardment of heavy military and all other kind of guns. Our meeting aim to establish a network of a civil society NGOs, and also, as you all know now, there is an AU meeting starting 2 days ago. At the end of this meeting, we have a statement. First, I will introduce my colleague, Dr. Belbari. He will just present the violent conflict in Sudan, their root causes and consequences. Welcome, Mr. Belbari. I leave the floor to you.
My task is really to lay down the ground for the discussion and action that will follow from my colleagues. And I will try to be brief to the point. Of course, I cannot exhaust everything. However, I will try in very just highlights to bring what is needed actually to attention. Of course, you are all familiar with what I am going to say, which is not new. We are expecting, of course, some of our colleagues from other African countries, the international community as well, to join us. But it seems that there's a very serious problem today of movement. People are stranded here and there in Addis Ababa because of this, arrival of African heads of states and governments. So it's a tough day. Now, I have to start by saying, or stating the fact that you all know, Sudan is a country of migration. It has been and it continues to be a country of migration. People come from different parts of the world, outside of Africa, of course, and they mingle there. This is a historical process many, many years ago, perhaps centuries ago. All right? In broad, Sudanese people, they divide themselves or classify themselves into Arabs and Africans. And here also you have so many problems. This is a question of self-identification. It has nothing to do with science, with things like genealogy, anthropology, or sociology. Really, they do not apply there. And even DNA. It is a question of aspiration. Somebody wants to belong to this race or the other, then that person identify himself, all right, with this race or the other. It's okay, no problem. I have no problem whatsoever. So many people should have no problem with it. The problem comes when people use such kind of distinction to kill, destroy, and manipulate power, whether it is political power, economic power, cultural power, to the end of the list. And we have seen the results. The relationship between Sudan and the external world, it has always been a relationship of exploitation. And this from the Turkish Ottoman rule of Sudan in the 19th century, 1820 onwards. They came for two things: resources, whether manpower or natural resources, gold and the rest of it, which is to be extracted from Sudan. And that process is really a historical one. It is about encroachment on African land by people who come from other places. Of course, within the years, people develop some common things. One of them Islam, for example, which became religion for a good number of the Sudanese people, and that created some kind of unity between the Sunni and the Sudanese people. However, in recent years, we have seen that equation is now really falling apart. And we have started seeing some kind of religious connotations to the political conflict in the country, and the use of that actually to gain power, prominence, etc., etc. Now, during the colonial rule, the British one, or the condominion as they call it, because it is Britain and Egypt that were ruling the country together, they start to establish a modern state in Sudan with the capital Khartoum. People who are from that area surrounding Khartoum were the ones who were exposed actually to the colonial rulers, and accordingly they received education and training from a state. And after independence, what happened was that we have seen the emergence of a new class of Sudanese citizens, manipulated power, and implemented policies to maintain the status quo. Of course, and it was unfortunate, and it's a reality, to continue the domination and what can I say, the theft of resources. What are the results of these policies? The result of these policies is really in political instability in Sudan, in war and armed conflicts everywhere in the country. Now, of course, we have started with the South. Immediately after the independence of Sudan, and even before that, a few months ago, in 1956, war started in the South. And that process continued until, in fact, the country was divided into two, and South Sudan went its own way. Pardon? 1956, independence of Sudan. Yeah, I said the war started a few months before that. Exactly, in 55. All right, and then we see this also in the coup d'etat. There are so many coup d'etat in Sudan from the time of independence. The question is why? Because of certain fears that people express, and then they decide to take power by force to implement their policies. Sudan, until today, it has no permanent constitution. Then we see also the result of such kind of policies in the conflict in Darfur. Very violent conflict in Darfur. And before that, of course, in the south, as you all know, about 2 million people were killed. 4 million people were displaced, and they lost everything. Their lives were destroyed. That was genocide. No one spoke about it. Again, we see it in Darfur now. Conflict is now raging there, almost more than 20 years now, since 2003, and continues today without an end. And we see the wrong of those policies nowadays, as Sudan is now almost everywhere. The whole country is in war with itself. The question is why the Sudanese people are fighting each other like this? Why the Sudanese army has been killing Sudanese citizens, waging war here and there. And these are people, that the army has the legal responsibility, a moral responsibility to protect and save their lives. Now, without going into details of things that you all know, as a consequence of the ongoing now fighting, the destruction of lives, livelihoods in a massive scale in almost all parts of the country, with the exception of perhaps 5 states, where there is no fighting, but the rest of the country, it has fighting in a way or another. One of the things that we really have to highlight and to focus on is hate speech. Hate speech, that is a real problem in the country. And this is a very risky situation if it was not addressed in the way it deserves. Then I cannot exclude that the whole country will go into war. People will be divided along ethnic, racial, and regional lines. That stage, it cannot be really excluded and overlooked. What is going on? What we see now is really, especially after the expansion of the military operations of the rapid support forces into the central region, Jazeera State, for example, and perhaps Sinnar and the rest of it. Now we have seen a very serious surge in hate speech and calls for killing and destruction on ethnic lines. And of course, the images that we have seen in Medney, for example, where some innocent people were rounded up and killed, more than 200 people, in a very brutal way, with accusations that they are part of the rapid support forces, which cannot be really ascertained because there is no investigation, there is no kind of any kind of judicial process. So identifying those people and then be sure they are part of the rapid support forces, they were just like that. And the main element that unites those people, they are from Darfur and perhaps from Kordofan and other places. And most of them are not educated and they work, as street vendors or doing some menial work in the marketplace. That is just one incident. And then we have seen also, some political demagogue and irresponsible colorism, and I have to say, by the way, they are spearheading actually the campaign of hate speech, and some of them even they try to give it religious connotations by saying this a responsibility, jihad, religious responsibility is jihad, for people to take up arms and protect themselves. Perhaps you all know that on 23rd of December last year, the governor of the River Nile state, his name is Muhammad, I think, Al-Badawi, something like that. He addressed a public rally in Al-Damar, and then he said, well, I am ready to arm all those people who are armed. By the way, including women, huh? This is very serious. These are civilians. They have nothing to do with the military. They are not organized. They are not trained. However, they were asked, come, take weapon, go and fight. And he says that people can even bring their own weapon or buy their own weapon from any kind of source, and they are not ready to ask anyone a question about it. And again, he also issued a decree. In that decree, he decided that all pacifist, peace activists, and human rights activists should be expelled out of the state, including members of the pro-democracy movement. I think, and this is very serious. And it was actually, just a blanket threat to anyone and everyone, whether that person is from the state or not. He doesn't want them. This is an absolutely unacceptable degree of intolerance. And then there's a very key element that people should not really neglect. Supporters of the former regime, they have a hand in what is going on there, in those calls for killing and destruction on this ground. Those calls for arming civilians. And the River Nile state and the northern state are largely considered as the bastion of religious fundamentalism and ethnic centrism in Sudan. And I think the danger is here. People should really be vigilant and look at it with the attention it deserves. So here there's a problem, and I think this is a responsibility of all of us. Activists, human rights advocates, and above all, journalists and media as well, and political leaders as well. to come, sit down on the table and see exactly what can be done about this imminent risk that will take the country to places that we don't just want to see. Then, the second point that I really want to focus on is the humanitarian situation in Sudan. It is catastrophic, to say the least. People do not find enough food, water, sanitation, medicine, and shelter. You know, there are so many people now in this place, they have no place to go to. Really, some of them, they do not have any shelter on them. This is the end. All right? And above all, now we have famine. I don't know whether you know about it or hear about it or not, but it is a reality now in some parts of the country, and we have to face it. And this is very urgent, very acute. It cannot wait any longer. So people have to intervene now. Otherwise, tomorrow it will be late. And if famine took hold in the country, then we will see thousands of innocent people die every day. And then it will be another scar on the collective conscience of the Sudanese people and of the international community. There are so many individuals, so many authorities that send the alarm signals about the imminent famine facing Sudan now. And one of them, which I really want to quote here, is that on 5th of February this month, that is about, say, less than 2 weeks, there are 30 international human rights experts, these are mandate holders of the UN system. They issued a statement, a very unique statement. And I will quote to you what they said. So, and I quote, Sudan is facing one of the fastest unfolding crises globally, with about 25 million people, including over 14 million children, of whom 3 million under 5 suffer from acute malnutrition, in their need of humanitarian assistance and support since fighting started between the Sudan Armed Forces, SAF, and the Rapid Support Forces, RSF, in April 2023, killing at least 13,000 persons and injuring 33,000. End of quote. And they added, and I am quoting as well, quote, about 17.7 million people across Sudan, representing 35% of the population, face acute hunger. 17.7 million. 17.7 million. 17.7. Huh? No, inside Sudan. In Sudan. Across Sudan. Everywhere in Sudan, that means. The ongoing conflict, and I quote, has exacerbated existing tensions among communities centered on reported allegiance to conflicting parties, access to land, and local authority structures, which has further complicated the already complex placement context in Sudan. The scarcity of resources and limited international humanitarian aid has significantly increased the risk of violence between host communities and IDPs, with older persons, persons with disabilities, women and girls falling victims of targeted attacks by the members of the host communities. End of quote. These are, I have to say, moderate and conservative estimates, because the real figures could be much more bigger than that. In conclusion, Mr. Chair and friends, I have to say that there is an imminent risk of a full-blown civil war in Sudan. That cannot be excluded by anyone in his common sense. Take it into consideration in your work on Sudan. And unfortunately, such kind of an internal armed conflict or war, it will pit the Sudanese people on ethnic and regional backgrounds, could be colored as well. And this serious threat is really growing by the day. And I think you see, as journalists, of course, you are more familiar perhaps than myself about, the features and the manifestations of this kind of risk and danger. The second point is that, as a reality, a deadly famine is now taking hold, at least in some parts of the country. In Darfur, in particular, we have the images from Darfur. I think Abdul Majid has some of the images that start to emerge, and these are just few of them. We don't have the totality, and this cannot be accepted. This famine is taking place at a time when, in Port Sudan, by the way, there are stores full of food, medicine, and relief material. And these are donated, actually, relief materials from some countries. They arrived in Port Sudan, cleared, and kept in stores. They are not releasing them to the needy people, especially in Darfur. Even more, and we have seen Binni Minawi, Jibril Ibrahim, and I think others, of course, the army before them. They were very clear that no relief material should be sent to anywhere in the country except through Port Sudan. And in Port Sudan, they keep it. This is morally unacceptable. And they have no right whatsoever to do that, by the way. And this relief material is donated. It's not their money. It is donated by peace-loving people from across the world. And not for them, for those people who are in need. However, they keep them without any kind of background, and this should not be allowed. So, what we want is really want to see a strong, robust action from the international community. We want to see the African Union take the lead in that process. They got countries to that matter as well. And this is why we came to participate in the work of this 37th session of the Ordinary Assembly of the African Union Heads of State and Government. And our message is very clear, and I hope it will go across today. Thank you very much indeed.
Much for that introduction. I would like to say that I'm the Executive Director of the African Center for Democracy and Human Rights Studies and the convener of the Forum of NGOs in the work of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, composed mainly by civil society organizations around Africa and beyond. Mostly, they do have observer status with the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. I must confess that the Forum of NGOs, I will be concentrating more on the interventions by the Forum of NGOs in the work of the African Commission, because we have all convened around the African Commission being the premier human rights institution in Africa. And I must say that since 2003, the forum has been engaged with the subject of Sudan. And up to now, we thought that by now it would have been better, but it seems it's getting worse. What is going on in Sudan now is predictable. The writing has been on the wall for a long time. And I must say that when the General Bashir wanted to convert the Janjaweed into a paramilitary formation, we had spoken out against that. We were able to say to the commission, stop it, because this is going to lead to disaster. But then when it got to the government, they were not too happy that we are predicting disaster for Sudan. But we know that if you have a paramilitary lineup and they don't have anything to do, then it's about power. They will start fighting. And here we are in 2023, war, conflict broke out again in Sudan. It is noteworthy for us to mention that the Forum of NGOs and the African Commission have been in the forefront of advocating for the protection of the people of Sudan, because there have been various reports that highlighted the fact that citizens are on the receiving end of violations. We've had reports about women being abducted. We've heard about women being kidnapped or raped just for the sake of being women. And that is something that we believe a lot of work needs to be done to ensure that women and girls do not continue to suffer as a result of the showing of power between two groups of military fighting each other, trying to show each other who is able to conquer. One would have thought they would show it to foreigners, but to be killing your own citizens is something that is very worrying and is a cause for concern. Let me say that the African Commission, following resolutions from the NGO Forum, have come up with about 5 resolutions. Most of it calling on the government of Sudan to stop the hostilities. And at present, they are engaged on Sudan. And since the coup d'etat of October 2021, these resolutions have been in 2021, in March, they had one. In April, in December, they had 4 different resolutions, in which they call on Sudan to work towards the preservation of peace and security and to respect human rights of its citizens on its territory. Furthermore, there has been a communication of the Peace and Security Council of the African Union, which came out last year, April 16th, in which they also made their voices heard to the to the government and people of Sudan to ensure that they come and bring a stop to what is happening, because a lot of stories have come out. Some are being verified, some have been verified. And as we always say in English, there is no smoke without fire. People will not be giving testimonies if nothing has happened to them. So it is very important for us to also add our voice. And the forum will continue to add its voice. In its press release of 21st of April, the African Commission expressed its outrage in the strongest terms possible against the indiscriminate bombing and shelling of sites in civilian residential areas and destruction of civilian infrastructure. On 23rd of May, the Commission adopted another resolution which strongly condemned the ongoing fighting between the Sudanese armed forces and the paramilitary rapid support forces. And to make matters worse, one would have said, okay, these are foreign troops coming to fight and these are defending the territory. Unfortunately, they are all Sudanese and they are fighting against each other. And that is something that I think we should be able to join hands to see how we can assist to bring peace back into Sudan. I have noted the various resolutions. I have the numbers. I will share it with Baggy, and he will also share it with you. They are online. They are on the website of the African Commission. They are also the resolutions of the Forum of NGOs. They are also on our website, the African Center's website. And if you also want to see the communique of the Peace and Security of the African Union, I also have the reference, and you can also check what it is saying. So to my mind, we all know that the international community have been saying a lot of things in terms of being worried about what is happening in Sudan. Even at the level of the Human Rights Council, we have been able to engage. And today we are proud to say that they have come up with a commission of independent experts who are also working on Sudan. So one cannot say that the international community is resting on its oars. We are doing our best, but then it seems we need to do more. And it is in that vein that we are here today to say that what is happening in Sudan is very worrying, and we never know whether it will spill over to other countries, because we have refugees going to Chad, going to Somalia, going to Eritrea, all over the place. So it is very important that we try to see how we can stop it and restore peace in Sudan. And I want to thank you for this opportunity of giving me the floor, and for all of you for being here, because it's a worthy cause that we are all concerned. Thank you very much.
يعني أسلط الضوء على قضيتين عندهم علاقة بمحاور ندوتنا اليوم. جزء يتعلق بطبيعة الأزمة نفسها في السودان، والجزء الآخر يتعلق بكيفية التعاطي مع هذه الأزمة من زاوية البعد الإنساني ودور المجتمع المدني اللي ممكن يلعبه، لأنه أوريدي إحنا موجودين في أزمة يعني. لذلك أنا أعتقد إنه المحور الأول، أنا أعتقد ده المحور المهم جدا في تقديري الشخصي، لأن المسألة السودانية تاريخيا يعني بنيت على أساس مفاهيمي مغلوط ودخل إفريقيا بشكل عام جنوب الصحراء. ولكن في السودان من مؤتمر مؤتمر المائدة المستديرة في 64 وقبله نادي الخريجين وقبله ثورة 24 وحتى كل الحوارات اللي تمت، وحتى الحوار اللي تم فيما يتعلق بمسألة جنوب السودان والحرب اللي كانت بدأت في 55 فيما يتعلق بمستقبل هذا البلد، كل المعالجات اللي تمت كانت بتعاني من أزمتين حقيقة. الأزمة الأولى عدم شمولية التصور لحل الأزمة. الأمر الثاني تناوله بشكل سطحي ولم يتم تناوله بشكل جذري. جذور المسألة السودانية هي حقيقة غياب حالة من التوافق الوطني في المسيرة بتاعت تشكله من 1820 وحتى الاستقلال. دي مجتمعات منفصلة ليست لها علاقة ببعضها البعض، والاستعمار تعامل معها على هذا الأساس، وبالتالي حالة الاندماج الوطني أو ما نسميه احنا لدى البعض بحالة التوافق الوطني لم تكن موجودة. لما جاء دولة 53 و 56 الاستقلال استمرت على نفس النهج اللي تركوا الاستعمار، ولذلك أنا أعتقد كان طبيعي جدا أنه كل المعالجات السياسية اللي كانت موجودة من 55 فيما يتعلق بمسألة جنوب السودان، 64 أيضا في التأكيد على مسألة الأزمة في داخل جنوب السودان وفي السودان بشكل عام، بعد كده زي ما ذكروا الشباب في التعاطي مع مسألة دارفور من 78. كل الأزمات اللي كانت موجودة كان ينظر إليها بشكل جزئي وكان ينظر إليها بشكل سطحي. أنا أعتقد نحن الآن أمام تحدي كبير، عندنا محورين يجب أن نشتغل عليهم. المحور الأول يتعلق بمعالجة جذور الأزمة السودانية. هناك أزمة توافق وطني، أزمة تعايش وطني بأبعاد متعددة سياسية واقتصادية وثقافية وهوية، وتتعلق بالهوية وتتعلق بالتباين في مستوى التنمية بين الأقاليم السودانية نفسها. هل نحن عندنا استعداد نتعاطى مع الأمر بهذه الجذرية؟ هناك تجارب كثيرة في العالم، التجربة بتاعت لبنان، التجربة بتاعت ميثاق وطني، حاولوا يفصلوا الميثاق عن الدستور، لأن الدستور ممكن يتعلق في أي وقت. لكن مسألة الميثاق هي بتعني إيه؟ إنه هذا الجمع من البشر على ماذا يتفق؟ ما هو الحد الأدنى اللي يشكل ميثاق بين الناس دي قضية ما يتم تناولها. نظام الحكم، الهوية بتاعت البلد، علاقته بمفاهيم أمنه القومي، كل القضايا دي تكون موجودة في شكل بتاع ميثاق. للأسف الشديد التجربة اللبنانية فيما يتعلق بالميثاق ثبتت الحقوق على أساس يمكن متخلفة ما عندها علاقة ببناء الدولة الحديثة، على أساس الطوائف والأديان وغيرها في لبنان. لكن التجربة في ماليزيا، في تجربة في أماكن أخرى، حاولت تبحث عن التوافق بشكل صحيح في شكل ميثاق خارج إطار الدستور وأعلى من الدستور، اللي ممكن يحفظ للبلد دي الأسس اللي ممكن يتعايش على أساسها. لا يمكن احنا نتكلم في تقدم أو بناء دولة العنصر الفاعل فيها التنظيمات الإسلامية والحركات الصوفية والإدارة الأهلية. أساسا دي مجموعات ما عندها علاقة بالدولة الحديثة. أنت لا يمكن أن تعالج مفاهيم الدولة الحديثة بأدوات ما عندها علاقة بده. الدولة هي عبارة عن مجموعة قوانين الناس بتتفق عليها عشان تعيش مع بعض، متعددة ومتباينة في أديانها وفي لغاتها وفي ثقافاتها وفي تاريخها المختلف. يحكمنا قانون، هذا القانون يجب أن يراعي هذا التعدد. إن لم نتناول المسألة بهذا الشكل العميق، أنا أعتقد المسألة حتكون مستمرة فيما يتعلق بالأزمة السودانية. الجزء الثاني اللي هو يتعلق الآن، نحن في قلب الكارثة، نحن الآن في قلب الأزمة، ولذلك أنا أعتقد نحن الآن من هذه المنصة أنا بدعو أن تتوحد كل منظمات المجتمع المدني السودانية بمختلف توجهات، اللي يعمل في مجال الطفولة، اللي يعمل في مجال البيئة، اللي يعمل في مجال حقوق المرأة، في كل المجالات. علينا أن نتوحد وأن نتماسك مع بعضنا لكي نجد أكبر تحالف مع أبناء قارتنا اللي هم المنظمات المدنية الإفريقية، حتى نلعب دور مؤثر في الحد من هذه الآن بيتم في السودان جريمة على فكرة. يعني تخيل لما يكون في نزوح في داخل السودان 17 مليون. بدايات المجاعة بدأت تظهر الآن في دارفور، ممكن تنتقل. لو استمرت هذه الأوضاع بهذا الشكل ممكن تتحول إلى حرب أهلية في السودان كله. لذلك أنا أدعو من هذه المنصة، علينا أن نتوحد في الحد الأدنى، علينا أن نجمع القارة بتاعتنا خلفنا. ودي مناسبة كبيرة جدا موجودة الآن، المؤتمر بتاعت قيادات أفريقيا في أديس أبابا، نرفع تصور لكي نتضامن ونقلل من حجم الكارثة الموجودة في السودان، وده أقل واجب ممكن نعمله. شكرا.
The participants at the civil society consultation meeting on Sudan held within the sidelines of the 37th session of the AU Assembly of Head of States and Governments are utterly disturbed by the deteriorating human rights and humanitarian situation in Sudan. It is a matter of grave concern that the armed confrontation that pits the Sudanese forces and the rapid support forces and the militia groups associated with each one of these two parties are continuing to unabated, which poses a serious security risk to millions of Sudanese civilians trapped in the crossfires and fighting zones all over the country. The ongoing senseless military confrontation has caused the death of at least 20,000 individuals, displaced more than 9 million civilians, and rendered more than 25 million people hungry, and left 80% of the healthcare facilities in the conflict-ridden areas no longer function. The warring parties are committing multiple crimes against civilians, including but not limited to extrajudicial or summary executions, arbitrary arrests and detentions, torture, ill treatment and forced disappearances, sexual and gender-based violence, violations of freedom of expression and peaceful assembly, particularly affecting peace activists and humanitarian workers. More often than not, these crimes, which constitute violations of the rights guaranteed by the African Union, Constitutive Act, and other legal instruments to which Sudan is a state party, are carried out on ethnic and geographical backgrounds, particularly targeting people from the greater Darfur and Kordofan. The humanitarian situation has been degrading rapidly, and millions of Sudanese citizens are facing a deadly famine, especially in Darfur. Graphic images of skeletal bodies of acute malnourished children are emerging in social media every day, at a time when considerable amounts of donated relief materials are stored in Sudan's ports under the control of the military authorities. It is totally unacceptable that the Sudanese military authorities continue to ignore the warning signs sent by highly recognized authorities on human rights and humanitarian matters, including the statement issued by 30 international human rights mandated holders on February 5th of this year. Meanwhile, we are profoundly dismayed to notice that the dire humanitarian conditions and dangerous security situation in Sudan are not accorded the particular attention they merit on the agenda of the 37th ordinary session of the African Union's Assembly of Head of States and Government. Nevertheless, we call on the African Union statement to attend this session and to add to the African Union Assembly. We call them to condemn the ongoing violence and military confrontation between the Sudanese armed forces and the paramilitary, the Rapid Support Forces, and their associates, and call for immediate and unconditional ceasefire by warning the parties as a prerequisite for political talks to bring a definitive end to the current conflict. To activate Article 4 of the African Union's Constitutive Act, authorize the dispatch of a military force to end the massive violation of human rights and humanitarian law, including war crimes, crimes against humanity, and acts of ethnic cleansing taking place in Sudan. To take immediate measures to ensure the creation of humanitarian corridors so that the necessary relief materials reach the needy population without delay, especially in Darfur. To mobilize African states and international actors to bring pressure to bear warring parties to use all measures in its power to compel the leaders of the warring parties to put an immediate end to the conflict, to put in place a mechanism for monitoring, documenting, reporting, and preparing for human rights and international humanitarian law violations by the warring parties, including particular attention to the situation in Darfur. We thank you for your time today, and we call on you to carry our message here, wide and far, and we hope to bring an end to this war soon. Thank you very much.